John, can you talk to me about the identity match mentoring?
Yeah, definitely. I think a good way into it is to talk about how I got involved in it and, why we started the program. I was working at the university and was invited to a meeting about statistics of achievement in a particular school. And it was clear that if you were a student of colour in that school, you were less likely to achieve than your white counterparts, less likely to get a 2-1, more likely to drop out.
Right. Okay.
And that I subsequently found out that statistic reflected the experience of students of colour throughout the country in all universities in the country. Not a fault of the students, it's an institutional thing, and something that many institutions are trying to address at the moment, and the University of Brighton certainly are. So because my colleague Beth Thomas Hancock had experience with mentoring programs, we decided to set up a pilot mentoring program for students of colour, and it was very successful. It was successful in that it gave students support, it boosted their confidence, but it also gave the university information about the lives and experience of those students in their education at the university. And it also, I found it fascinating because I came down to study in Sussex in the late 1970s, and I found that the students were talking about things that reflected my experience in terms of a lack of role models, a curriculum that didn't reflect their personal experience. Yeah. So those sorts of things made us think that it would be great to have a program where students of colour had a mentor of colour that sat with them and helped them talk through their issues, talk through their studies, talk through their challenges, talk through their aspirations, and help them move forward. And it's always proved to be really successful because, like I would have loved at that time to sit down with somebody who had my personal experience, who knew about my culture, who understood where I was coming from, and therefore I was able to talk with them to get ideas about moving forward, and that's exactly what these students do. And you can see it, you can witness the development of relationships where students become comfortable about who they are, where they are, why they're here, because they're talking to somebody who's had a similar experience from a similar cultural background.
Yeah, I like that. There are very similar reasons as to why I had a mentor myself.
Okay, so yeah. Why did you choose to have a mentor?
I wanted to have more black role models in my life, specifically my academic life. Mm-hmm. As being in Sussex, you look around and you see there's not many people of colour around. Mm-hmm. The majority are white people, yeah. Which in my academic life I'm used to, and that's fine. But it's nice to have more role models, people of colour as role models.
And reflecting back, did you feel the same when you were at school? Did you have that experience at school? Did you see many role models?
In my school journey, I think it wasn't until I was 15 that I had a black teacher in front of me.
Mm-hmm. And what about your studies at university? Does what you study reflect you and your culture as somebody or something, a background that has contributed to the area of psychology, which is what you study?
Yeah. To be honest, no. I think there was one black psychologist that we had, and it's usually predominantly in the further reading. Okay. So in the main lectures, it's not featured. So you look around and see just white men, to be honest. Yeah. And then you see, at first glance, it doesn't faze me, but when you think a bit deeper, a field I want to get into, I'm not seeing anyone that looks like me. It can make me think, am I having imposter syndrome? Am I meant to be here if no one like me is here?
What about university life? When you think about university life, for me it was exciting. It was exciting to come away from home, to live in a different environment, to sort out my own finances, to find digs, to have a social life. Does having a mentor help you in those sorts of areas as well?
I think so, definitely in the social life aspect, because you have someone who can connect you to other people, especially in the area or in the greater country nationally. Yeah. So I think it can help you connect with people, socialise, network, and socialise more and go to these events. Yeah. And get that uni experience.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it, that having a mentor, and this is what I feel I've experienced, helps you to have an overview of where you are and what you're doing and what you're trying to achieve as a black person, as a person of colour, and talk about those issues that might affect you positively or negatively, but it helps you negotiate your way around all those sorts of issues.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I'd really encourage it, and I'm glad that I did have one. Although it was only my 3rd year, in hindsight, I probably should have had it earlier, but I feel like I've definitely got the benefits from having one.
Definitely. I think everybody, I know it's such a difficult thing to do because students have so much information to take on in their first year, but everybody should have an opportunity to at least look at this mentoring program and see whether it's for them. And if I was at uni now, looking back, I would have loved to have a mentor that was similar to me from my cultural background, that understood me and where I was coming from.
And what about now? Do you have a mentor, or have you had a mentor in your life?
Yeah, I think we were talking earlier about my career. You know, I was a head teacher, and you know, that in itself was a journey, and it was a similar journey because in my career I constantly was in situations, in institutions, in schools where I didn't see people like me. But over my career, over the length of my career, I've had people who were mentors and coaches, whether they be people of colour, whether they be allies, that helped me look at where I was, think about my aspirations, take a positive view to what I wanted to do and what I wanted to try and do, and just help me negotiate my way around all the sorts of issues that perhaps sometimes you withdraw into yourself and think about yourself, and that can cause you problems and issues.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I feel having that mentor, that person a few years older than you, they've, especially with their similar cultural background, they've been through that identity feelings, or they may have, and you can talk to them about that. Yeah. It's not having that, and there's just that common understanding that you don't need to address it. It's just known. I thought that just helps.
That's a good thing about the program as well. We're in a position now where we can interview mentors. We interview them and train them. Most of the mentors that come to us, and a lot do come to us nowadays, want to do it because they want to give back, they want to support students because they remember a time when they were in a similar situation as people of colour in educational institutions. So we really can choose our mentors very carefully, and we're so fortunate that 99% of the time we're able to match people like you very carefully with their mentors, so that they have a productive period. What was your mentor like in terms of, you know, the relationship that you developed with him? Was it him or her?
Yeah, it was a man, and it was great. Like throughout the time, he really got the time to get to know me, know what my career aspirations were, me as a person, my hobbies, my interests, and then he'd open up his network. So when I was talking about my dissertation, he said, "Oh, I think I know someone who might be helpful for you." Then he opened up his network to me, and then I could speak to those people and get some advice on my dissertation about topic ideas. And then he would send me job applications to say, "Oh, this is something you could be interested in." He really went above and beyond.
Brilliant. Do you think that that networking issue is an important issue? Do you think it's different for students of colour in an area like Sussex, which is predominantly white? Do you think that networking thing is important? And have you been able to find more networks because of the mentoring?
Yeah, it has, and I think it's very important because sometimes it's not, as they say, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yeah.
And just opening up those networks to people, they can then pass on their information to other people, and before you know it, you can just constantly expand on your network, find out about opportunities, jobs, all these things that you wouldn't know if you didn't have a mentor who didn't open their networks up to you.
Yeah. And what would you say to a student who said to you, I don't need a mentor, everything's okay, I'm fine, you know, I'm not struggling?
Then I would say to them, I've throughout my academic journey, I haven't thought that I've struggled. I feel like it's been quite plain sailing to an extent. I enjoy my subjects, so I don't mind doing extra reading. So I didn't want a mentor because I thought I was struggling or as a sign of weakness. So if someone thought that, it was a sign of weakness, I'll tell them it's not. It's just opening up your networks and communicating with more people with similarities to you. And why wouldn't you want that, to be honest?
Why wouldn't you? Brilliant.
As you said, the white counterparts have that luxury, so why wouldn't you?
So Raph, can you talk to me a little bit about the process? How did you find out about the mentoring program, and then what happened after that? Did you have to fill in an application form? How did you meet your mentor? All those sorts of things.
So I got an email and I straight away thought, I saw the identity match mentor and I thought this looks interesting. So I clicked on the find out more, filled out I think it was a quick questionnaire, just asking about my background, who I'd want to be paired with. It was very straightforward. Then there was a Teams meeting with yourself and Beth, who just spoke about the process, how you meet up as frequently as you can over I think it's 2 to 4 weeks, over 4 to 6 months. And then I met my mentor, and once those 6 months ended, he actually asked me if I wanted to extend it. Really? So then we extended it, and even now we still communicate every now and then, just checking in with each other.
That's
extremely really nice.
And I know in that process there's an aspect of the training which talks about all the areas of support that are available to you as a student at the University of Brighton, like in housing, in welfare, in mental health, well-being, all that sort of stuff. And that information is given to your mentor as well. Did you ever use that pack of information? Did it become important, or was it just there as a support for you?
I think it was there for support. I didn't use it myself personally.
Okay.
Yeah.
And going back to the process that you had with your mentor, that first meeting, what did you go to him with in that first meeting, or was it just a get to know you session, or did you have a burning issue that you wanted to talk about with your mentor in that first session?
Now for me, it was just a get to know session, but my mentor Lyndon asked me a few questions of what my career aspirations were, what my hobbies are, what I'm studying. To find out all those interesting questions, to find out who I am as a person.
Right.
As he said, this is for me, I want to know what I can do to help you. And then that's what he did throughout the sessions as the sessions went on.
So did that conversation develop into goals for you that you wanted to?
So then I was juggling quite a lot of working, my own hobbies, studying and revising. And then managing my own flat and stuff, sort of thing. So then he was saying, you've got a lot to manage. So then he'd help me with my time management, my project management and stuff. He said, okay, you've got a lot on. Let's look at them and tackle them and see what we can do. As we don't want one to hyper focus on one, and you end up neglecting the others.
Yeah. And did he give you strategies to think about when dealing with those sorts of issues? Because, we forget, don't we? I said earlier about how exciting it is to be away from home and at university, but you've got all those challenges of managing your finances, managing your time. So many students talk to us about prioritising and those sorts of things. So do you think you're still using the things that your mentor said to you, or did they just help you bring those things out and organise yourself in that way?
I think they helped me really see the value in them. So some of them were specific to my academic journey. So as I finish, I'm not using those ones now. But the other things in my personal life, I can really use. So really just that project management, having a diary so I know what I'm doing.
Right.
And just communicating more. He helped me with my communication skills with friends and family to say, look, if I'm feeling stressed at something, I've got my dissertation, let's say, I'm not going to be able to see you. And then those feelings at times that I thought my friends wouldn't be understanding, say, sorry, I can't come out, I've got my project. He really helped me understand that, to communicate and just have that moment to just offload and say, this is how I'm feeling.
I think that this conversation is raising another interesting point. The things that you've been talking about have not been to do with race or culture or anything. It's just been about you as a person, as a student, as an individual. And do you think that's important that we all recognise that although it's an identity match programme, you've been talking with your mentor about lots and lots of different issues that affect your life and your study and your career.
And that's why I really enjoyed the identity match mentoring, because although we were both black, we didn't need to bring that up. There was just that common understanding, and that didn't even need to be mentioned. And I feel like that's what this is about. Whereas you may find yourself when you're with other races, there's that hyper focus on your race, but because we were both black, there's just that understanding that this is that. We don't need to really discuss it unless we want to, and we didn't feel that was necessary.
That's really interesting.
That's why I really enjoyed the process.
And what about career-wise, looking forward? Because obviously part of the mentoring program is to help
Yeah.
you think about what you're going to be doing after your degree, and I know you've graduated recently. Did it help you think about those things, or focus, or give you some ideas?
It did, yeah. He's found me some opportunities to look into, and which I have done. Some of further studying, as I said, oh, these are my career ambitions. So then he did his research and said, oh, if this is what you're looking at, have you looked at these websites? And I've looked at that, and still figuring out what my next steps are. I have a rough idea of what 3 options I'm looking at, and that is help because of the mentor. The mentor helped me with that.
It sounds a fantastic experience.
Yeah.
Has it made you yourself think about mentoring people younger than you in a similar way?
It has, just seeing how beneficial it's been for me now, and it's equally something I could have done with when I was younger myself. It's definitely something, it's made me see the benefit of it from that side of things. So putting my shoes in the mentoring role, I would love the opportunity to do.
Brilliant. The whole process sounds absolutely fantastic, but I'm going to ask you probably a question that's maybe difficult to think about, but do you think there are boundaries to the mentoring program? You know, you have a mentor, somebody supporting you in all the areas that you've said and helped you develop, but do you think that there are boundaries that perhaps you shouldn't go outside in terms of holding that relationship in that area and keeping it about you and your studies and that sort of thing?
For me, nothing comes to mind. I mean, I imagine there are boundaries, but I don't think for the problems and the topics that we discussed that I entered out of the boundaries, but I can't think of any. If I were to ask you, do you think there are any? That there's a realm that the student and mentor should stay within.
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating talking to you, because you've described in so many ways how your mentor has supported you in all areas of your life at the university. But I think it's also important to know for students who might be thinking about the program that a mentor is a mentor and a coach. But if there are other issues that fall outside this really important relationship, issues to do with health, issues to do with finance, issues to do with well-being, then the program itself identifies areas where you can go and get that sort of support. And the mentors are trained to help you in that way as well. It wasn't necessary in your case, but I think it's important that students know that there is a wealth of support within the university, and that the mentors can direct and guide you toward that if need be.